Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. We have some huge challenges. The next 40 years, the rich countries have to cut the CO2 emissions with 80%, developing countries with at least 50%. The world energy demand is growing. Two-thirds of the world's population has a legitimate need for more energy. This is going to be very, very difficult when we know that, additional to that, we will have close to 2 billion more people the next 40 years. That's the most enormous challenge the human beings ever have faced. I say this because we will have a lack of energy, food, fresh water, and we will have all too much CO2 and climate gases in the atmosphere. The science today is working very heavily to conclude what's going on global warming. This will be presented in 2013-14 by the International Climate Panel, which still is, in my opinion, a very, very important source. That's the best we have. I am afraid that they will conclude that we need to go what I call carbon negative to be able to avoid a larger temperature increase than 2 degrees the next 40 years. 2 degrees, that is affecting the polar areas enormously. The last 10 years, the melting of the Greenland ice has increased from 2 gigatons a year to 4 gigatons a year. So what do we do if we have to solve these problems? If this science is right, what kind of options do we have? What's the parameters that we have to look out from? And today we are consuming globally around 19,000 terawatt hours to keep the level of welfare we have today. If we are going to increase the countries outside OECD at the same level as we have inside OECD, we would increase that energy consumption up to 54,000 terawatt hour. If you use the US Geological Survey's estimates of coal reserves, we will then have spent them within the next 30 years. We need to be extremely innovative. We have to take care of early movers and risk takers, and we have to stop talk. We have to do. I've been working with Bellona Foundation soon in 26 years. When we started, it was a point at the problem. Today, it's all about finding solutions. 6-7 years ago, I started to work out a carbon negative strategy. I've been working for many years with carbon capture and storage. Could we combine this with bioproduction? Because what happens if we use bio for energy production and take care of the CO2 and get away with it? Then we go carbon negative. What we saw in our studies was that we need to use what we have enough of. That's CO2, that's desert, that's seawater, and that's sun and heat. And we should use this to produce what we need more of. That's fresh water, that's electricity, that's food, that's bioenergy. Why this focus on bioenergy? I emphasize we need all kinds of weapons to combat global warming and poverty. But bioenergy represents a way to store energy produced also by other renewable energy sources. If we could use solar wafers or concentrated solar power to pump in seawater to the desert, produce fresh water, and make biomass from that, we store the energy, and you have the whole world market. If you are only building a solar panel farm, you are dependent on grid system. The combination between biomass and renewable could enable a lot of possibilities for stand-alone renewable energy production in the countries that need them. So what we have done is that we have, together with our partners, created a foundation and a company called the Sahara Forest Project. We have plans for bringing in seawater to the desert, cool concentrated solar power by this technology, because they need cooling and they cannot use up fresh water for cooling these facilities, and we increase the output of electricity a lot. We then do the cooling with a greenhouse we have developed that is evaporating seawater and producing fresh water. We are combining this with synergies for algae production, and we think we have strategies for bringing down biofuel costs a lot. You could use then the biofuel to produce biogas and run the turbines in the concentrated solar power plant during night. You get CO2 and you feed the algae. In a way, the bigger activities we have, more carbon we store in the ground and in the products. I say this because I think there will be enormous future markets for bioenergy, and that is one of the big unknowns. What could that do? And why should we only use fresh water? Why can we not use seawater? We are also studying in Bellona what we call Ocean First project. We are now working at 2 different locations in planting seaweed from nutritions let out from the fish farming industry. If you do that around all the fish farm industry in Norway, you could probably produce 2 million tons of seaweed every day. And you will get a much more healthy fish farm. We're also having projects with this at Madagascar and other places, because this is a way to create employment. And with 2 billion people that needs a job, do you think we lift the world's poor up to a better level of living standard by selling them oil from the north for $120 per barrel? No. I think the future will show that in the future the rich world will be demanded to look at climate change in a little bit different way. As a bank loan that we have created our welfare from, that we now have to pay back with an interest. Because if we could cut 120% in Europe, you enable Africa to have bigger and faster growth. They have more to go on when it comes to the CO2 emissions. Why should not we be obligated to buy, for example, parts of the sustainable biomass produced in Africa and the Middle East, to do co-firing with European coal power plants and carbon capture and storage, and you make the biggest emitters to one of the biggest weapons that we have. If you look at it, with the existing infrastructure today in Europe, you could remove 3.5 gigatons of CO2 every year by doing this. That's close to 10% of the reductions needed in 2040. But if you had enough biomass, you could go up to 10 gigaton. That means 25% of all the reductions needed in 2050. How many people do you have to employ in the Middle East and in North Africa and in other areas where we have desert to burn so much biomass? It's 40 million people, less than $2 a day in Egypt. Isn't it better that they are growing biomass than carrying around on a Kalashnikov? Doesn't we have a lot of other reasons, security reasons, to act this way? I'm sure that we are not able to combat global warming and poverty without this new kind of innovation ideas. We are extremely proud of the cooperation we have with Yara and CAFCO, where we're building a 10,000 square meter laboratory for this that's going to be up and going before the climate negotiations in Qatar this year. We have a very good cooperation in Jordan, where we have got a large area inside Aqaba. Why should we not make the Jordan Valley green? And at the end, this is a way to produce fresh water, food, energy, and clean air. We need that. And we need to find strategies where we employ the developing countries in the energy production in the future in a sustainable way. We will have partnerships. We have been an NGO. We are now starting to act commercially because going green by black numbers at the bottom line is the only way to do it. And that's why we are so proud to work with business companies to not only talk, but to do the implementation. And I hope what we are doing the next year is going to give you a lot of good reasons to be optimistic, because I am. Thank you.
Thank you.